Uh, Todd Conitzer, can you make your way out of that middle of that row? Everybody give Todd Conitzer a hand here. So as he reads it, realize, I want you to picture the moment. Have fun. And I want you to picture the moment when this man had his own kids watch, and ask yourself, would people say some of these things about you someday? Like, would your kids, would your coworkers, your friends, your classmates, do they know you're carrying the cross for Jesus? Or would they say, yeah, he's a casual Christian, he's part of the crowd, which really, by the way, is not a believer. We'll see that in a moment. Todd.
There's a lot of people. Rufus. My name is Rufus. You might know my brother, Alexander, and most certainly most of you know my father, Simon. For years, my kids have been telling me I should share my story publicly, and I've been meaning to, but I could never find the right time until today. So here it goes. This story goes back to my father. You see, for many years, he wanted to make the trip to Jerusalem. And this was a big deal because it was very expensive and it was a long ways away. It was over 1,300 miles to Jerusalem. And it was absolutely going to take us every bit of over 30 days to get there. So, Dad, he saved all the money he possibly could, and we got to make this journey together. Now, see, it was a big deal because other men from the empire would also make this trek, and we got to share this time together as we went. Now, when we got to Jerusalem, we tried to arrive about 5 days early so we could enjoy the festivities. You see, the town was normally about 120,000 people, and it swelled to well over 2 million. So there wasn't a lot of places to stay. We were fortunate to find a host family that was about 90 minutes walk from the front gates. So we spent that first few days going into town, and Dad and Alexander and we were just enjoying all the festivities, being able to go and eat things and see things and walk in the temple and hear new messages. We even were able to purchase souvenirs to take back to the family. Now, after those 5 days, the day right before the Passover lamb was to be slain, our host came running down the hill, and he burst through the doors, and they said, they captured him, Jesus of Nazareth. Now, you see, we didn't really know who Jesus was. We had heard about him. They said he was the Messiah, and that he had been doing all these miracles, and they planned on having some sort of trial. But it didn't really matter to us. I mean, we just enjoyed our festivities that evening to prepare for the next day. Now, that next day, Alexander and we woke up early because we were so excited. We were up at the crack of dawn. Daddy made us this big breakfast. This was the day he prepared for. He washed our bodies from all the dust from all the travels. He reached into his satchel and he had 2 special garments he wanted us to wear. So it was a big day. We hit the road, I'd say about 7 o'clock. The sun was shining in the air, and as Alexander and I do in our travels, we were just having fun. We were throwing rocks and hanging with Dad and laughing and sharing in this moment with all the people walking up to the city. As you see, this day was different. That buzz we got accustomed to those first 5 days wasn't there. We entered the city gates, and something was different. As we turned the corner, we could see 3 men coming down the cobblestone streets. And around them was a small crowd gathering. And then there was Roman soldiers that were whipping these men and saying, "Move!" We didn't really quite know what was going on. But as they got closer, Dad reached down and he grabbed our hands and he said, "Stay close, boys." The crowd gathered around them, and they came closer and closer, and I could see the second man was Jesus because they kept calling out, "Save yourself, Jesus! Where is your miracles now?" They came closer, and Dad reached down, and he grabbed both of our shoulders, and he pulled us close, He was afraid. He wanted to turn and go, but the crowd continued to gather around us, and we were swept up now. There was nowhere we could go. Jesus and the other two men continued to get closer. The Roman soldiers continued to get louder, and right when they got to us, they fell down. Jesus did, right in front of us from pure exhaustion. The crossbeam had to be over 100 pounds and pinned him to the ground. I looked up at Dad, and I said, Dad, what can we do? And Dad, he was just like, there's nothing we can do, son. About that time, I saw out of the corner of my eye a Roman soldier make a dash over to us. He grabbed Dad by the shoulders, pulled him out into the streets, and he turned and he said, it's okay, boys. It's okay. Stay close. Alexander and I, we locked arms so we wouldn't be swept away. And he pushed my dad towards the cross, and he said, you pick up the cross. Pick it up. Dad knew there was no excuse. He had to. He reached down, he picked the cross up and put it up on his shoulder. About that time, the Roman soldiers went around, picked Jesus up, threw an arm over his shoulder and over the crossbeam, and they had to walk together. I watched Dad. He reached over and he said something, but I never knew what it was. All of a sudden, Alexander and I, we locked arms and we moved around to the back of the Roman soldier at the back, and we could see up the hill to Golgotha where they were walking a few 100 yards away. And we looked, and all I could see was Jesus's gashes opening and closing with each step. And we followed in the bloody footprints of Jesus. Now we got to the top of the hill. And Jesus, he fell down in complete exhaustion. Dad, he threw the crossbeam off in just anger. And the Roman soldiers came in and they shoved him back, and he stumbled back and he fell down onto the ground. And as boys, all we wanted to do was be with our father. We ran to him and he held us in his arms and he said, it's okay. It's okay. We heard and watched the nails drove through his arms. I will never forget that sound. I saw his eyes pierce through my soul. But it was full of comfort, compassion, and love. They attached the two cross beams together, and they stood the cross up as it thunked down into the hole like it did hundreds of times before. And we were sat there for like hours. We heard him say, forgive them, Father, they don't know what they're doing. And then he said, it's finished. You see, I will never forget that day. My father, he bore the scars from being whipped with Jesus going up the hill. His hands were stained with Jesus' blood and mixed with his sweat. As he held us, I could just see the tears in his eyes. The question comes, will you pick up the cross? Will you? My father did. And I'll never forget that day. Never.
In the story, there's a letter from the early church. This was a life-changing moment for these two kids, Alexander and Rufus. To watch your dad pick up the cross and carry it. I mean, the dad was bringing them to Passover. He believed in God. He's like many of us. I mean, this story is like many of us. He was taking his family to an Easter celebration. It's Passover for the Jews, but Easter. And he didn't know. He went to an Easter celebration. And that day, God called him out of the crowd. He said, no, you're not here to worship. You're here to carry. And I wonder, are you part of the crowd or are you a cross bearer? I'm a cross bearer. Maybe a cross bearer. God wants you to enter the Easter story. There's a reason. You're like, I'm not sure this church thing's working out. Yeah, because you're not carrying the cross. It's not fulfilling to be part of the crowd. It's not. Which is why it didn't work out for me. No, it's not working out for you because you're not following God. Alexander, the older son, believed it so much that when given a choice between death and denying Christ, he chose death. martyred. Rufus, the younger son, became a missionary, pastor in Spain. I wonder what your kids' legacy you're leaving. Are they seeing you carry the cross? Now,